I mean, it has created a firestorm. Nigel, I can start with you in Britain. And now the palace has said tonight that they're going to handle this internally.
Yes, and I'm not sure that's the best way of doing it because there were two allegations from the Oprah Winfrey interview that really do need looking at carefully. One is the allegation of racism within the royal household, and the second one is, in a sense, perhaps even more serious, is that Meghan claimed when she asked for help for her mental health issues, that was refused because it wouldn't look good. Now, I think those two are key. I mean, if you go back a bit to Princess Diana's bombshell interview, we didn't get anything like this. This was actually talking about what goes on in the royal household and about somebody like Meghan, who felt completely and utterly unsupported. And the idea of actually dealing with the whole thing internally, I'm not sure is really the answer. I think there should be investigation. It can't be a public one as such, but I do think the results of it should be made known.
Joe, you know, the statement from the palace says that recollections may vary. What do you read into that?
Well, I think they're trying to avoid getting into a he said, she said. I mean, you know, it is always said that we and the Americans, are divided by a common language. We don't know. We weren't there. Meghan clearly feels upset, slighted. She was very unhappy. Whether or not this is the right way to go about airing your grievances so publicly is a different question. But I think what the royal family are trying to say is we take this seriously. We're going to investigate it. You know, it may not be as she said, but they're not accusing her of lying. But I think what they're trying to do is to close it down, because in the end, although, as Nigel says, this raises very serious issues about, you know, the country's number one public family and its institution, it is fundamentally a family matter that has been given huge, great publicity thanks to the interview.
Well, it's not really a family matter, is it, Nigel? I mean, the Queen is the head of state, and this is an institution that is supported by the British people. And if there is a lack of compassion towards somebody that may be suicidal, and indeed, if there is traction in this racist allegation that somebody asked Harry about the color of the skin of the baby, how brown it would be, that's a matter affecting really all of Britain, is it not?
Yes, I think it is, because these are allegations which I don't think can be swept under the carpet. And Joe's right. That really is what the palace would like to do. And again, you are right that the royal family is funded by the British taxpayer directly to the tune of £67 million, but it may be up to about £340 million when you take in all the various other things like the protection that they need, the security surrounding them, the cost of some of their homes, which is borne by the public purse, and also things like the land that they've inherited that the public could actually benefit from, which is the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall, and they bring in something like £80 million. So yes, I think that the British taxpayer has a stake in this, and therefore that is why any investigation must be seen to be done properly. And the only way that is going to happen is if the results of that are known. We're not asking them to start talking about private rows. We're talking about centrally two particular allegations, which I think need to be dealt with properly.
Is this the unfair part of that interview where, you know, she came out and didn't want to, and Harry wouldn't name who made this comment about, questioning the color of the skin of the baby yet to be born? Is it unfair insofar that it completely was a scattergun on every single member of the royal family, making the entire royal family out to look racist, aside from the fact that Oprah then clarified that it wasn't the Queen?
Well, I have to say that Oprah Winfrey, I know she's got a huge following, but there were lots of questions she didn't ask. And she didn't ask, what was the context of that conversation? If you're not going to say who it is, then why say it at all? Because, as you say, all you're doing is you're besmirching everybody. And, there's huge speculation about who might have said it, who could have said it. But we don't know whether it was somebody saying, gosh, I wonder if the baby's going to have ginger hair like Harry, or, dark hair like Meghan. I mean, we weren't there. We've only got Meghan's word for it, Harry's word for it.
Nigel?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it would have made things worse had Harry named the individual who was involved. As Joe says, you'd only have Meghan and Harry's word for it, and also one assumes that it was somebody actually close to Harry that he didn't want to hurt. And bear in mind that the interview that they gave has certainly hurt every member of the royal family and nothing.
And what is the cost of that? I mean, somebody asked me today, could this lead to the end of the royals? I mean, I think that's ridiculous. It will blow over, probably not for years to come. They will weather this storm like they have many others. But is there a price here? I mean, this has been a devastating interview.
There is a price, in the same way there was after the Diana interview, and then in the Queen and the royal family's reaction to Diana's death, which was broadly seen as not what the public expected. But it will blow over eventually. The problem is that by making it so very, very public, it's made it extremely difficult for Harry and Meghan to come back into any other way, whether they come back for, I think they're coming back for something later this year, or they're scheduled, or he's definitely scheduled to come back for something later this year. And, there are going to be state funerals to attend. There are going to be weddings and christenings and things like that. And, they've created such a schism at the moment that it seems very difficult as to how they can mend that.
I would like both your perspective on, the prince and Meghan Markle of privacy. I mean, they talk about privacy, leave us alone, and yet they seek out press when it benefits them financially as well. And in this case, they have aired more dirty laundry on Oprah than any royal, I think, has ever talked about. So there's a huge cavernous contradiction there. Nigel?
Yes, I think it probably is that they were complaining a lot during the interview about press intrusion, and obviously they were then opening their lives up to the whole world. They think they've got a gripe, and the only way that they can deal with that is to make it public. As far as the damage goes, I mean, we will have to see over the next few days whether Meghan and Harry are more damaged by doing this than the royal family, or maybe it'll be both equally. I tend to think that in the long run it'll make no difference, because those people who want the United Kingdom to become a republic will still want it to become a republic, and those who don't won't. It gives sort of some ammunition to the Republicans. I'm a monarchist, but I'm not a royalist. And nothing about the interview with Oprah Winfrey has changed my position.
What does that mean?
It means that I believe that we should have the Queen or the monarch as head of state, because I think that it's constitutionally really important for this country. I'm no great fan of the royal family as such. And so I wouldn't mind seeing, say, a slimmed down royal family, one that cost a bit less. But I do believe that it's really important for the stability of the United Kingdom to have the monarch as head of state. Now, our entire constitution has come about by evolution. unlike, say, America, France, or Russia, which came about by revolution. And as a result, we have a certain stability. Now, if you change all that, we'd end up with an elected president, which would sit really uncomfortably with a parliamentary democracy. You could go the Irish route and have a purely ceremonial president and still maintain your parliamentary democracy. But then, in that sense, that's what the Queen is. That's what we've got. We've got
Nigel,
a ceremonial head of state. Is
there any serious talk of this? I'm sorry, Joe, I'm going to come back to you in a sec. Is there any serious talk of this? I mean, monarchists versus the royalist vision of a new United Kingdom. I mean, is this conversation in the context of this interview and these horrid, lurid allegations by Meghan, does it pave that road to change?
Well, I don't think it does, because as I was saying earlier, I think that if you're a Republican, you'll carry on being a Republican and it won't change your view. Just in the same sense, if you're a monarchist, it won't change your view. But yes, the truth is it does open up the debate. The debate's been going on for years about whether or not we should have a monarchy. And it kind of splits down by age and politics. So you're more likely to have Republican sympathies if you're younger, and if you are on the left rather than the right. And the early opinion polls are showing just that. What this does do is open up the whole debate. And it's one thing that the British establishment has always wanted to close down. This debate has opened up over reform of the House of Lords. You could argue that an unelected upper house doesn't sit well in a democracy. But one of the reasons that reform of the House of Lords has never really happened is because if you did so, that could in itself threaten the monarchy. So there's a view amongst politicians that the status quo is the best thing to have. But yes, this debate will go on.
Joe, why did she do it? And why did Harry do it? I mean, coming back to that question, people say that, with a velvet knife, they struck the heart of the Queen and the palace. Do you think she was trying to get even? Or, I mean, is she a victim, or is she a very, very clever, and some would say nasty piece of work?
I think if you put it in the context of, here was a woman in her mid-30s who had been, by all accounts, a fairly successful actress. She'd been married before, she'd lived her own life, she'd run her own career quite successfully. She wasn't the sort of the ingenue that Princess Diana was. So she came into it being, one assumes, a bit more worldly wise. I think part of the problem is that she's not British. And I think that is a bigger problem than anybody recognised, because I think, there are things that we say, and Nigel knows, and as I said at the beginning, we're divided by a common language. Americans don't always get Britain. They don't always get the way we behave. And of course, you've got an institution in the royal family which is absolutely rigid in things. So it is true, as we are led to believe, that Meghan thought it was acceptable to accept designer clothes as freebies and was then cross when she was told no, it's not. That to me shows a degree of misunderstanding and a lack of knowledge that I would have thought in a woman of her age and her capabilities frankly beggars belief. Why did she do it?
But why? I mean, people could understand maybe why she didn't have much long-term love for the royals. But I mean, why didn't Harry step up?
Because I think Harry he's absolutely smitten with her. I mean, I think he is probably a troubled soul. But, as you alluded to earlier, if he had said, I don't want to be part of this, I want to go away and grow llamas on a Scottish island, that's fine. To go to the other side of the Atlantic and in a Californian mansion with all the trappings of that showbiz lifestyle and the money involved and the acolytes and the deals and the agents and the PR people and everything else, just seems to me to sit very uneasily with his upbringing and his time in the army. I mean, he apparently enjoyed his time in the services, and he's given that all away. I mean, he has really burnt his bridges, I think.